But this is easy to digest, and I think it's easy to understand if you just take a step back and look at the team. Look at the roster of the 2024 Bengals. You saw them. You watched them. A team that finished 9-8, that at one point was 4-8, that had one of the worst defenses in the National Football League, that had an offensive line with holes. Look at that roster. Last year's team. How many of those players do you want to be on this coming year's team? How many of the free agents they signed for last year's team do you want to continue to pay this coming season? How many of the players from last year's team who were drafted by the Bengals and were in years 2 or 3 of their professional careers are you thinking as bona fide, surefire, long-term pieces? Not that many, right? Not that many at all. Let's do this. Let's go back and look. Look at the Bengals 2021 draft class, which, let's see, for those guys, it's pretty simple. This would be year 5 for a lot of those players. Players who either would have already signed a contract extension or would be due to be free agents. The 2021 draft class, when they drafted Jamar Chase, Jackson Carman, Joseph Osai, Cam Sample, Tyler Shelvin, Deontay Smith, Evan McPherson, Trey Hill, Chris Evans, and someone named Wyatt Hubert. When they drafted those players, maybe the idea wasn't that all of them were going to get to a second contract with the Bengals, but surely the idea was some of them would. Are you interested in any of those players beyond Evan McPherson and Jamar Chase who are already under contract? Look at the 2022 draft class. A group of guys that has been in the NFL now for 3 years. Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, Zach Carter, Cordell Volson, Tyson Anderson. And there's someone named Jeff Gunter. 6 players. How many of those are cornerstones? Cam Taylor-Britt might be. Would you call him one now? The reason why the Bengals are doing what they're doing isn't because they have this skewed, weird view of how to build an NFL team. It's not because they place too much emphasis on wide receivers. It's not because they place too much emphasis on a handful of guys. It's because there's nobody else. They are doing what they're doing because what they're doing is pretty easy. Why is it easy? Because there are no difficult decisions to make. Difficult decisions would be, God, you know what? We got to figure out what to do with T. Higgins. But I tell you what, man, look at some of those dudes in the secondary. We got to pay them too. Instead, It's not that dissimilar from where they were when they paid Joe Mixon. They paid Joe Mixon at the end of the 2019 season. And it took a while. It lasted into training camp. And, you know, some wondered, is there going to be a hold in? Some made it about Joe Mixon versus A.J. Green. And my perspective then was, go ahead and pay Joe Mixon. I know he's a running back. Pay him. You got a quarterback under a rookie contract. Your team last season won 2 games. You don't have any good players. Might as well keep this one. Might as well pay this. This is a good player. He might play running back. This is a good. Pay him. Who else you got? It's not apples to apples, I'll acknowledge that, but it's not that dissimilar. There's nobody else. The other decisions the Bengals have to make about this year's team are really about just cutting dudes. Like Cordell Volson, like Geno Stone, like Alex Kappa, maybe like Sam Hubbard. It would be ideal if instead of cutting Geno Stone, you were thrilled with his first season and you had to account for the money he was going to be making in 2025 because you wanted him on the team in 2025. And it would be awesome if you said, God, you know what? Not only do you want to keep Alex Kappa, you got to start to think about what you're going to pay Cordell Volson long term. Now, anybody want either of those dudes on the team? It would be neat as hell if you could look at Dax Hill and go, tell you what, man, yeah, 5th-year option is coming up, but boy, that's a guy long-term you're going to have to figure out how to pay. Or Cam Taylor-Britt, that's a guy. You're not doing either. At least you're not prioritizing them. It would be awesome if, in the case of Trey Hendrickson, you said, dude, we are good. We don't have to pay this guy long term. We don't have to pay him when he's 32 or 33 years old. We've got Miles Murphy. Yeah, good luck with that one. So, to a degree, they're kind of backed into a corner here. Maybe what they're doing you think is prudent, and maybe what they're doing you think is irresponsible. I kind of feel like they don't have a choice. On their football team, they have this one area that's really, really good, and one defensive player who's really, really good, and no one else. At least no one else who you have to pay anytime soon.